Hello, and a massive welcome to Deanne Apostolou. Hello, how are you?
Hey, good, Michelle. How are you going? Good.
I'm very well. It's beautiful to have you with us this morning. And we've just had an amazing session that we had at 9 o'clock that I think you said you watched, which is fantastic. And I've just got this little feeling that what you talk about is going to beautifully pigeon-tail and go together with what we've just heard. So lots of the summit ends up being like that, because when we invite the speakers to speak, we get them to speak about energy, but from their perspective. And there's a lot of crossing over and underlying sort of fundamentals that people share that are in common. And that's what makes it so useful, I think, as a summit. So as people are jumping on, we'd encourage you just to share with us where you are watching from. If you can put in your town or your country or your city, we'd love to find out. If you are watching this on the replay, please put #replay and make any comments so that we know. And what I'd like to do is, I love the title of your talk because it's so simple. Wouldn't you like to have more energy? Now, I don't know a living soul that would tell you that they want to have less energy.
Right.
I think that kind of question is a question that you'd get everybody saying yes to. So I know that you're a herbalist and iridologist. You treat stress, anxiety, and a whole range of other different conditions. And I'm sure you're going to share some of that with us today. So I will hand it over to you to take us through all the secrets of how we're going to have more energy. Thanks, Deanne.
Wonderful. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the introduction. And geez, you've had some fabulous speakers on. Yeah, thank you. I've sort of jumped on yesterday and caught a couple. And yeah, like you said, I caught Melinda. And yeah, absolutely what I'm about to sort of mention really aligns with all of that. What I've noticed is that a lot of the speakers that you've already had are speaking about energy in a metaphysical and an emotional way, which is incredibly important. But today I'm going to talk about energy on a physical level. It's all tied together though, like you can't separate it. It's called holistic treatment, you know, and it's looking at everything and every person as a whole. I also teach herbal medicine, and that we've got this thing that we talk to the students about. It's holistic in two forms. It's all about looking at the whole person. So if someone has a heart condition, you're not just going to treat the heart. You know, you're going to treat all the other factors that have caused that heart to become a bit of a problem for somebody, whether it's their food, whether it's their emotions, whether it's their exercise regime. But the other side of herbal medicine, and obviously being a herbalist, I just love herbs, and I'll come back into something Melinda said in a minute too. We use the whole plant, like there, as opposed to vitamin and mineral supplements, as opposed to specific active ingredients out of the plants. As a herbalist, you use the plant, all the active parts of the plant that are found to have an effect for certain conditions. Like you'll say you'll use the aerial parts, or you'll use the root or something of the plant. But the whole thing is used, not just taking out the active ingredient. So it's holistic in that area as well. So it really just ties everything together. And then what Melinda was saying about, you know, we are like plants. We really are, because we need nurturing, we need water, we need air, we need food, to be able to grow and thrive. And we're exactly like plants, which then when I take it back to where I come from, that's why plants have such a synergy with humans, and plants have such amazing healing processes for us human beings, like as a whole being. And there's a lot of people that also go right into plant energetics, which is talking to the plants, and it's shamanic healing with plants as well. And every time I use my herbs, I use them in tincture form, so they're in liquid form. They're in, you know, I get them in a brown bottle, 500 mils generally, and then I use about 5 to 6 different herbs, put them together into an individualized mix, and give that to somebody to help them with whatever, you know, we've worked out they need through the consultation process. But those plants have come from raw material, and they're pressed, and they're all the all the goodness and the active ingredients and everything is taken out of them and put into liquid form. So they work so well because they have this energy and they really align with us on a physical level too.
And what led you to becoming a herbalist? Like, it's not a very common thing, so I'm interested in your pathway of how you got there in the first place.
It is always really interesting to find out how people got into the natural health profession. My personal story is nowhere near as amazing as other people's, but I was a beauty therapist, and so I worked a lot on the skin, and I had a lot of acne patients. But it wasn't just the acne, it was also noticing the difference in the women that came to see me. And once they'd taken off the jewelry and taken off the clothing and put the gown on, taking off the makeup, you just saw this amazing raw human being in front of you who was very vulnerable and who would, in that process, unload and tell you a lot of the stuff that was going on for them on a physical basis and an emotional basis, And I always wanted to help from another perspective, not just from obviously the physical side of doing the facial and the massage, and you feel fabulous when you've had that done. But it was just wanting to go that one step further, and especially with acne. And then I had some of my own minor health issues, and I wanted to get at everything from an internal level. So it was wanting to go internal. And I just, my sister actually found this amazing college. I was actually living in Sydney at the time, so I started studying in Sydney. And then my sister found this amazing college in Newcastle. So I moved back home and finished my training with Nancy Evelyn in Newcastle. And that was a long time ago, like 26 years
we
ago.
won't ask you how long ago that was. But
that's all right. I've been practicing for about 26 years. So,
Right.
It's just amazing. And I just love what I do. And I've been teaching for about 10 years now. It's getting close to 10 years. I've been teaching herbal medicine.
Herbalist college, do you? Or
yes, we had a fabulous college in Newcastle for quite a few years, and then that only closed down about 2 years ago. And I'm teaching online to with a college from Brisbane. So it's ongoing. There's so much to learn. It's like everything, and especially these days, it's constantly evolving. So there's so much more research being done on herbal medicine and natural therapies. And Melinda kept saying that as well. Everything is now being backed up with science. And I'm sure she'll agree with me when I say, well, hey, science is catching up. You know, a lot of the stuff
behind, isn't it? Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, it can't be helped in a way because things emerge and evolve, and with science you need to sort of, they really like to be able to go back and really get the basics and the fundamentals and go, well, why is this happening? You know, why, Professor Sumdamilla, why is this so? But it's so true. It's really important that, I mean, I was being taught about gut dysbiosis when I first started training in 1992. And now gut dysbiosis is leaky gut, or when your gut's not working properly, you know. So now they're going, oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff that actually is coming back to the gut. Like the vagus nerve is, as far as nerves go, it's a thick nerve, and it actually runs from the back of the occipital, so like where your spine meets up with your skull, and it runs on a diagonal and comes out through the solar plexus. So again, I was taught about the vagus nerve, you know, back in the early 90s, and now they're starting to go, oh, there's actually a two-way highway between how we think in our head and how we feel in our gut. So what we feed our stomach is therefore then affecting how we think. So it's a two-way street. It's how we feel affects us physically in our gut and how we digest our food, but it's also that what we are eating comes back up and affects how we are feeling and what we are thinking.
And there's a lot of interesting research emerging about the relationship of mental health and gut health as well.
Yes.
It's a really interesting space, and I think that's quite new. A lot of people are just starting to find out about that.
Yeah, it is. It's nutritional psychiatry is actually what they actually officially term the phrase, and it's so important. There's a lady by the name of, I think she's a professor now, Professor Felice Jacka, who has done a lot of research. And if people look up her name, it's Felice, Felice, Jacka, Jacka. She's done a lot of research, and it was her research that made the I don't know, the body of psychiatrists, I guess, decide that there was room for another area of psychiatry called nutritional psychiatry. And that was back in about 2000 and maybe even only 2010. So it's not all that long ago. But her father was a herbalist in Melbourne. He started one of the big schools, Southern Cross School of Herbal Medicine, down in Melbourne, or in Victoria anyway, may not be Melbourne. And so she grew up with that side of things, and then she went on to do it within the medical profession. And so now they realise that, yeah, nutritional psychiatry is really important, because what we eat affects how we think and how we feel.
I just think it's such a fascinating area, because especially to do with mental health, because so many people struggle with mental health issues, but they also struggle with how to treat them, because there's a lot of the standard kind of treatments that don't work, or they're not very effective, or they've got too many side effects. So I think it's really interesting for people in that area to be able to explore the role that food has on your mood, but also in relation to our conversation, the relationship that food has to your energy. Do you want to talk about the relationship between food and energy for us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's incredibly important. Energy is about what you feed your body, what you feed your mind, and what you feed your soul, right? So it's everything interconnected. You cannot separate everything. And ultimately, it's about what you feed, what's called your mitochondria. So I don't know if many people have heard of mitochondria. I wanted to sort of just touch on that, because it's really important to understand the role of mitochondria in our bodies. Just briefly, it's mitochondria are structures within our cells. So each individual cell, and we know we're made up of like millions and trillions of cells, each individual cell has like a factory, a mitochondria factory in it, if you like. And that converts the food that we eat, like fat, sugars, and proteins, into energy. So then this energy is called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. Some people might have heard of ATP. And so what it does is it supports every single function in our body. So we have about 100,000 trillion mitochondria in our bodies, right?
That's a lot of mitochondria.
It's huge. It's huge. And each one of these little mitochondria has about 17,000 assembly lines that makes ATP, which gives us energy.
Wow. No wonder we get tired. That's a lot going on.
That is a lot going on. And that's why we need to look after our bodies in a physical as well as the emotional and the metaphysical side of stuff. But if we don't look after our bodies on a physical level, no matter how much work we do on the emotional side, it's not going to have an impact. It's not going to help. Yeah. So there's even more mitochondria in our really active organs, if you like our muscles, our heart, and our brain, because they physically have to keep moving and working. So we've got areas in our body that we physically move, but there's also areas in our body that just keep working without us thinking about it, right? So the heart keeps going, the digestive process keeps going without us actually thinking about it. So with mitochondria, they are really, really sensitive, and they get damaged very easily. So if these mitochondria...
What sort of things that we do would damage mitochondria?
Fatty foods, processed foods, sugar, smoking, sunburn, stress, all literally all of our modern day living.
but they're also all things that are our choices, right? These are choices that we're making every day. These are not things that we have to do. These are things that we're choosing to do, either we still know that it's got a negative impact and we're still choosing it, or we don't know that it's got a negative impact and we're choosing it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So when the mitochondria aren't working properly, what it does is it slows down your metabolism. It causes fatigue. It can cause memory loss. It can cause pain. It can cause rapid aging. So when the mitochondria break down, they stop producing energy. And what happens instead is when we have like all those factors we just listed with fatty foods, processed foods, etc., too much sugar, alcohol, you got to have alcohol, add alcohol into that because alcohol turns into sugar as soon as we drink it. It causes oxidative stress. So oxidative stress in our body is like it creates free radicals that run around our body and destroy our healthy cells. So not only
not the political kind of free radicals.
No, not the political kind. We have free radicals in all of us. I liken it to the game. Oh, okay, this will show my age. Pac-Man. I don't know if anybody remembers.
Oh
the
yeah,
game
I'm a Pac-Man girl. Yeah, that was such an 80s game. Yeah.
Yes. So Pac-Man ran around gobbling up all the men, right? So yeah. Pac-Man is the antioxidant that runs around gobbling up the free radicals that have been created by the oxidative stress in our body. Okay, so what we need is lots of antioxidants in our diet to go around and gobble up all the free radicals and then feed our mitochondria properly and give us more energy. Simple.
And what is the easiest, most user-friendly way that we can do that?
I call it eating a rainbow on a plate.
What do you mean by a rainbow on a plate? That's a great visual image, by the way, when you say that. I really like, I'm a visual person. So yeah. What do you mean?
Colourful foods. So all the foods that are really bright colours, like berries, as in all your berries, whether it's goji berries or blueberries or strawberries, anything that's really bright with your berries, capsicums, like all your different colour capsicums, tomatoes, and even your leafy greens, they're still classed in there as well.
Are there
carrots?
Are there certain colours in that rainbow that are more important than others, or are they all important?
They're all important. Maybe just a tiny bit more important are your red and orange and yellow.
Mm-hmm.
So and that sort of then, I guess that sort of takes in your blueberries, because blueberries and goji berries are, we like to term them these days superfoods, because they have got a huge amount of antioxidants in them. So as long as your plate has got lots of colour on it, and I guess when I sort of talk about that, it's like not just potato, like sweet potato is okay, but not, and white potato is okay too. I love potatoes, but it depends on how much.
Yeah. And what you put with it, how you cook it.
Yeah, that's right. And if you can put, with your potato, if you've got carrots and broccoli and peas and corn, great. That's your rainbow on a plate. So the other side of that is that 50% of that plate should be vegetables, 25% should be your protein, and 25% can be your starchy vegetables.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I think a lot of people, particularly in more older sort of generations, the way that they eat is that it's lots of protein. It's mainly protein and less vegetables.
Yeah. And don't forget beetroot in that, actually. Beetroot is a fantastic food, and that's I grate it fresh over salads all the time, but you also roast it. So antioxidants aren't destroyed in the cooking process. Your vitamins are, your minerals aren't, and your antioxidants aren't.
Okay, so can you describe, how some people are into raw food and the only thing that they eat is raw food. Is that in some way better to cooking it, or what's the difference between raw and cooked?
It depends on your digestive system. And this sort of then takes me into, like, there are so many different diet or eating, I don't like to call it a diet plan, but eating programs these days. But there are so many different ones because each individual reacts differently to each individual eating program.
Yeah.
Okay, so like what suits me may not suit you.
Yeah.
So raw foods are great, and it's fabulous to have them raw. But sometimes if you've got a digestive system that can't process raw things all the time, you might need to cook them down a bit. And some vegetables are better cooked. Like you can't eat a raw potato. Well, I guess you could, but it's not going to taste real good.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's the cooking process. The cooking process is like a pre-digestive phase for some vegetables. So it already starts that digestion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there are some foods, of course, things like broccoli and zucchini as well. You're not going to eat those raw. Blanched is best rather than overcooked. But yeah, just sort of touched in the water, in your really hot water. They're great for that sort of stuff. Cauliflower, it's hard to eat cauliflower if it's undercooked. So cauliflower needs to be sort of cooked really well, not overcooked, right? So like life, we need a balance.
Yeah. And what do you find when people come to you? What do you find that they are struggling with mainly? Like, what are the patterns that you notice out of people who come to you? What are they generally asking about?
I see a lot of people for, at the moment, anxiety, depression, and stress management. So, but then it's all, again, it's all interlinked. If someone is in a really stressful state, and I did speak about stress on one of your previous Superhuman summits, our body reacts in a really negative way. I won't go through all of the processes, but we create this oxidative stress within our body. We end up creating a lot of problems with how we digest, with pain, with fatigue, with all the rest of it. And what we need to do is to make sure that we can sort of put everything together. We put the jigsaw pieces together. I ask people lots of questions in the consultation, and I work out what they always ask them. What's your priority? What is your main area that you want to have help with? Because I'm not fixing it. They've got to help. I'm just giving them the tools that they can help fix themselves, if you like.
Yeah. I think that's to me, that's really important, because it's something that's already come out in the summit with other speakers, is the idea that we heal ourselves and other people don't heal us. But I think it's interesting because as a culture, we seem to have this over-reliance on external experts and external people, almost to the extent that we forget that it's us that's healing ourselves. I just think that's such a critical part to it.
Absolutely. And I think that comes back to, and Melinda touched on it as well, that we're not enlightened like we think we are, or evolved. And you said it, we're not as evolved as we think we are. And we need to keep evolving. We need to keep working on ourselves. We need to keep trying to improve ourselves. And I call it, and I'm sure a lot of other people do, it's living your best life. Yeah. So when you're getting up in the morning, you've got the energy to get up and go to the gym or go for a walk. So you're moving, you're feeling great, you're happy, you're smiley, you're making an amazing, wonderful, positive contribution to society. To me, that's what's important, is making that really positive contribution to society.
And I honestly think that that's what people are looking for when they're looking for good health, and they're looking to experience their lives in that way. But I think often we don't realize that we're the problem, in as much as we're also the solution. Well, that's because we are the solution because we are the problem. We're doing it to ourselves. We're doing ill health to ourselves.
Yes. And again, that comes back to the food that we're putting into our body. If we're not being careful of what we're fueling our body with, it's going to affect our performance, right? So it's also, and I use this a lot with males, sorry, I hate to be sort of sexist, but imagine owning a high performance car and not fueling it properly, or you're putting, petrol into a diesel engine. It's not going to perform really well, is it?
You wouldn't get out of the fuel place, no.
No, that's right. And it's going to cost you a lot of money. And that's a really
right.
shortened version of what happens to our body. And a lot of males have tendencies to heart attack more than women at a certain age until, you know, the stats come down a bit. But from, you know, 40s to 60s, there's more males that have heart attacks. They're not fueling their body properly, and then suddenly they need all this stuff to help to fix the engine, you know.
So can you go back and be a bit more specific with us? Let's take anxiety, because it's something that a lot of people suffer from, and it's very common, and most people can relate to it in some way, shape or form. So if someone came to you, you did the diagnostic, you found out that they were a very, very anxious person, what sort of foods would you be recommending to them, along with your herbal supplements that you're giving? What kind of foods would you recommend to someone specifically for to address anxiety?
Okay, so most issues start in the gut. So you have to look at feeding the gut, and stress causes inflammation. So what we need to do is focus on anti-inflammatory foods, herbs, processes in our life, right? So the things that bring down inflammation are high antioxidant diets, right? So going through the berries and the rainbow on a plate. Foods that make that inflammation worse are the same things that kill our mitochondria. Fatty foods, processed foods, sugar. Sugar is a huge one that we have a big problem with at the moment. There's a lot of hidden sugars in our food. And I always recommend, especially if mums are having problems with kids that are just, you know, hyperactive, it's really worthwhile. And then even for ourselves, actually, read the ingredients on the foods that you're buying, and try to have foods that are less processed. So foods that you have to cook for yourself. So having foods like, you know, making a salad sandwich on whole grains if you can, but if, you know, if the kids aren't going to like it, then okay, you have to use white bread for a while, or you use one piece of white bread, one piece of wholemeal bread to make their sandwich. But you're making that yourself instead of having a packet of noodles, right? Or having something that's coming out of a packet is incredibly important. So I
want to just get this. Sorry, I want to get this straight in my own mind. So are you saying that whether we came with anxiety or depression, or no matter what the sort of diagnosis was that way, your recommendation is pretty much the same: sort your gut out and eat antioxidant-rich food. Is that right?
Antioxidant and anti-inflammatory foods.
And anti-inflammatory food. So that across the board is going to help any of those related sort of conditions.
Yes, that's part one.
Yeah. Part one, okay.
Part one. Yeah. Yes, absolutely, it will. Because what happens with anxiety itself is this vagus nerve that we spoke about that comes from the back of the skull and comes out into the solar plexus. That's getting inflammation from the food, and then it's this feedback system from the brain. We start panicking, we start stressing, our vagus nerve gets irritated, and then it creates inflammation into the gut. And then the gut bacteria doesn't work as effectively as it should. And you get this overgrowth of all the bad bacteria and not enough of the good bacteria, which can then go on and affect all of the way that we are feeling, and our energy and our mitochondria, et cetera, that we've just been speaking about. Okay.
Sorry, I just want to just jump in just for a second. I just want to ask a question to everybody. If you yourself think that you are not eating at the level that you could be, or you know other people who are not eating at the level that they could be, just drop in a Y into the comments column, because I want to see how many people who are listening think that they could do something different with their food, or think that people around them could do something different with their food. In theory, this should be everyone dropping in a Y in the comments column, but we'll see how we go. So that's a shout out to you. Just drop in a Y for a yes if you think you could eat better, or if you think people around you could eat better. All right. Sorry, keep going. I just wanted to hear what people had to say.
That's okay. And I'll be honest, I can certainly eat better myself. You know, there's always different things that you can do at different times. And you know, if somebody's going to put, it's all in moderation too. If someone's going to put this really yummy gluten-free chocolate cake in front of me that's going to have a bit of extra sugar in it, I'm going to eat it, you know, but it depends on how much you're going to have. It's all in moderation. But if you're going to do that every day, and then you're going to have Fruit Loops for breakfast, and then you're going to have, you know, a Vegemite and cheese white bread sandwich for lunch, and then for dinner, you know, you're going to have, say, maybe just a big chunk of steak and mashed potato and nothing else, then eventually you're not going to feel well.
Yeah.
You know, and you're going to feel.
I think the interesting thing with our health is it's just like the frog being boiled, you know. It takes a long time, but ultimately you can boil the frog, but it happens incrementally, and the same thing happens with our health. We almost don't notice that we're not doing it right until we get symptoms. Then when we get symptoms, it's like the world has never been a worse place, because suddenly we've got this symptom or the other symptom or the other diagnosis or whatever it might be. Yeah. And we haven't been perceptive enough or definite enough in our own selves to notice that as time has gone on.
Yeah. And the same thing happens with our energy levels. You know, if we can suddenly sort of think, oh my God, I can't get out of bed this morning. You know, what's going on? I'm so tired. And then you might sort of want to look back and go, oh, okay, a few weeks, even a few months ago, I was able to get up and I was going to the gym 3 times a week and I was going walking, and suddenly I've slowly gone on this downhill trajectory and I'm not doing all that stuff anymore. And then you've got to look back and go, why, what's happened to my motivation? Yeah. But again, it's all interrelated.
There's a couple of comments I'll just share with you. One person saying, that's great advice, Deanne, live foods as much as possible. Someone else is saying, I find when I'm stressed, exercise and fresh food are the first things I get lazy with. That's so true. Ironically, the 2 things that help stress. Yeah. I think you've just described like every person on the planet, really.
Yes, because you get this, oh my God, I can't be bothered. And okay, I can't be bothered cooking tonight. I've had a really stressful day. We're getting takeaway. No problem. The problem comes in if that becomes a daily thing. You know, if you're eating out once or twice a week, but you're eating really well in between, should be fine, unless you've got a particular issue going on, right? So it shouldn't be a problem. The problem comes in is when that becomes a daily habit. And
it's
when
like the 80-20, it's like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, isn't it? What you do 80% of the time matters. The other 20% you can get away with.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, the 80-20 rule is brilliant. Yeah, I do like that. But then it's also knowing things like, okay, I'm really I need sugar. I feel like someone comes to me and says, I eat a whole block of chocolate at the end of the night, you know, and you know, they might be, then you sort of go, how big's the block? Like if it's only a small block, that's one thing. If it's a family size block, okay, there's a real problem. So I look back and I go, what are you eating for dinner? Is there not enough protein? Because if we don't have enough protein in our food, we're going to end up with sugar cravings. But the other side, sorry,
I didn't mean to stop you, but I do want to know how sugar works on our brain.
Because it creates inflammation and it creates free radicals, which therefore break down the mitochondria. So then we get sluggish and we get this can't be bothered, lots of fatigue.
Doesn't it also have some impact on your serotonin or your dopamine, etc.?
Yes. And the reason why is because 90% of our serotonin is made in the gut.
Just to catch people up. So serotonin is one of many neurotransmitters that you can get. Most people think that neurotransmitters are made in the head, in your brain, but it turns out, how many of them are made in your gut?
90% of serotonin itself is made in the gut.
90% of serotonin itself is made in the gut. And the link to this is that if you have anxiety or depression or any of those kind of mental health diagnosis, very often you'll be put on what's called an SSRI, which is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor medication. And basically what it does is it stimulates your serotonin to produce more. But what we're saying here is there's a way that if you're actually dealing with your gut, you can, through natural means, increase the amount of serotonin that you're producing.
Yep, that's it. That's it. So the more sugar that we eat and the more inflammatory foods and inflammatory processes in our body, which is stress as well, stress creates inflammation, the more that our gut then won't be functioning properly. And it comes back to this two-way highway through the vagus nerve that then affects how we think and how we feel. So it comes back up and the inflammation comes into the brain, and they know that anxiety and depression is a lot worse is caused by inflammation in the brain. Plus a whole lot of other diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's in the brain. Like cancers are often started with inflammation. Heart attacks or heart diseases started with inflammation. Then it all comes back to the gut and what we are feeding ourselves and how much inflammation is in our gut. So there's a lot of different treatments, and meditation is something that I always recommend to people. And it doesn't have to be, some people go, oh my God, I can't meditate. I can't sit there and have an empty brain. I just can't do it. And I'm not very good at doing that. I actually meditate a lot when I walk, and I put on these meditations when I'm walking, and walking in nature is really important. Getting your feet on the grass, getting your feet in the water and at the beach and the sand. So that reduces inflammation. Sleep reduces inflammation. So getting good quality sleep is really important. And then, of course, if that's not all working, exercise reduces inflammation too. But then, of course, there's a lot of herbs that can help just push you into that phase of starting to feel better while you fix up everything else. So, we said part one is like, yes, having a really good anti-inflammatory diet, antioxidant diet. That's part one. The rest of it is, of course, linking that and integrating that with meditation, with exercise, with sleep. And then your third part is your herbal medicine, which is amazing. There are so many herbs that are really good anti-inflammatories that are then also really good for pain or for healing or for anxiety. Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with herbal medicine.
So this is a bit of a random question, but what herbs do you grow in your garden?
I've got some great herbs in my garden, apart from the oregano and the rosemary and the mint and the basil. I've got coleus is one, which is actually really good. Coleus, yeah, which is a beautiful purplish plant, and it's really good for heart issues. One of my favourites is holy basil. And I know Heidi AJ mentioned something that she's been to see me before, and holy basil is something that I used for her. It's what we call an adaptogen. It's an amazing plant because it is such a high antioxidant. It's really good for so many different things. It's good for liver cleansing. It's good for oxygenating the blood. But I love the story, or it's not just a story, it's what they do in India with holy basil, is all around the Taj Mahal. They've got holy basil plants planted everywhere because it's such a good antioxidant that they feel that it helps to stop the Taj Mahal from deteriorating.
Yeah, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I've got another question that someone has asked that I don't want to share with you just quickly. How do you reframe the can't be bothered thinking? And that's a fantastic question. So thank you, whoever asked that.
Wow, it is. Melinda had a really good idea with that. Practice smiling more.
Practice smiling more.
Yep.
Yeah. But in that moment, I think what this person's thinking about is like, let's say you're about to, your example of you're about to cook dinner.
Yep.
and you're sitting on the couch and you're going, I just can't be bothered cooking dinner. I can't even be bothered going in the fridge to see what I've got. So I'm just going to order takeaway. That way I don't have to get off my couch. That kind of thinking.
Yeah. So I guess it's looking one step further and at the consequences of what's going to happen. How are you going to feel? It's like, are you pouring fuel on the fire and you're going to be even worse tomorrow? You're going to feel even lower. I can't be bothered. I'm not going to have more energy if I keep getting takeaway food or keep eating the foods that aren't going to align with me.
Right. So think about how you're going to feel in the future if you do this or not. The other one that I'll do, I'll just give my answer to how to reframe the can't be bothered thinking. One of the ways you could reframe it is just by saying to yourself, I'm just going to do this one thing that's good for me today. So instead of allowing yourself to think of, I'm overwhelmed by I can't be bothered, what you choose to think instead is, I'm just going to do this one thing that's good for me today. Now, that might just be that you're going to eat broccoli. Simple, end of story. But that's the one thing that you've chosen to do for yourself that's good for you today. And if you ask yourself that same question every day, then you can build up and you can say, what are the 2 things that I'm going to do that's good for me today? So I think that's the other way from a thinking point of view that we can help to address it, as well as that idea of thinking of how much better we're going to feel if we do eat the broccoli or whatever the example is.
I love that, Michelle. That is great. Yeah, absolutely. Because then it comes back to self-care. And it's like, let me nurture my body with good food rather than just eating whatever. And again, okay, people go, oh, but I really like to eat Indian takeaway. And again, it comes back to, that's fine, but you don't have to have it every day. And this can't be bothered is like, what are the consequences? How am I going to feel tomorrow if I do this? And how can I nurture myself and look after myself so I am going to feel better tomorrow? Self-care is really important, and self-care comes into the food that we eat, the way that we treat our bodies. Like I said at the beginning, what you feed your body, your mind, your soul. That's self-care, and that's looking after yourself so you've got the energy to get up and feel much better tomorrow morning.
It's your ability to think of the future you and the impact you would like to have in the future you, as opposed to the immediate you. Because the immediate you is always going to order takeaway. The immediate you is always going to lay in bed instead of getting out and going to the gym. The immediate you is always going to do those things that you're just going, oh, but I just don't feel like it. It's not about I just don't feel like it. It's about how do you want to feel at the end of today? Do you want to look back on the day and go, I'm so proud of myself because not only did I eat broccoli, but I also went to the gym. That's fantastic, because then you get this self-reinforcing upward spiral that happens as a result of that. Deanne, we've only got a couple of minutes left. So what would you like to wrap up with? Your last words of wisdom for everybody.
Wow. Okay. God, time goes really quickly, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
I guess it's making sure that you can, like you just said, about how to look into the future and how to be the best version of yourself that you can be. Like, how do you want to react positively or contribute positively? And if you've got children, it's like, how do you want your children to see you? How do you want to influence and impact your children? And it should, to me, it should be like, well, I want to be able to make sure that I'm raising good human beings so they have an amazing impact and a positive impact on the world. So you go backwards. And for me to be able to positively impact my children, I have to look after myself. I have to make sure I'm getting enough sleep, because there's nothing worse than snapping at your kids and feeling really cranky at them. And then you get the guilt. Oh my God, I feel really bad that I did that. And you can actually help to act instead of react by nurturing yourself with good food and really good habits.
Beautiful. And the only way you can ever achieve the future you is by choosing in the present moment to be the future you. Thank you, Deanne. I hugely appreciate that. You are a wealth of knowledge and information, and we talked about a lot of different topics and subjects today, and thank you so much. And for those of you who are listening, I'm sure you enjoyed Deanne as much as I did. Also wanted to remind you that we have something called the Superhuman Experience coming up, and we are offering this to you throughout the Superhuman Summit for $250 less than the full price, which is quite a bargain, might I add. And we would love you to come and be part of that. And it's your ability for us to have these styles of conversations, but in a much smaller scenario, with AJ and I leading you through that. So if you'd like to be part of that, jump on and register at the link that's going across your screen right now. Anyone who is watching this on a replay, please put #replay and feel free to answer those questions that we asked of everyone. And stay tuned for our next speakers coming up in a little while. And actually, just can someone put in the feed who our next speaker is and when it's coming up, because I don't know off the top of my head. But a massive thank you again. It's Andrea Keller, and it's at 12 o'clock. So thank you so much, Deanne. We appreciate everything that you've shared with us this morning. And thanks to our commenters and our users, and we'll see you at 12 o'clock. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.